My name's Helen. This is the 21st of April, and this is a continuation of my other video, which is titled Roman Soldiers Buried Jesus' Body, Jesus Speaks. This is more information about what Jesus showed me in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, but especially in the Gospel of Matthew in July 2019. So the Gospels that are usually read when people read the Easter story are Luke and John, because they have the most vivid descriptions of the appearance of angels. And then John's Gospel has this wonderful conversation that takes place between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And a Gospel that's not often cited at Easter is Matthew's Gospel, because, as I say, it doesn't have these kind of details, but it has some very other interesting details in it. About what happened to the body, but I've talked about that in my other video. Now I want to actually talk more about the resurrection body of Jesus, but there were a few points that actually I forgot to mention in the other video. One is in the Gospel of John, when John and Peter come to the tomb, having received the news from the other women that the tomb's empty, the stone's been rolled back, and the angels have said he's not there. When they come, Mary runs towards them, and it says in John's Gospel that she says to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." Who is they? Jesus got me thinking about this. Who is they? They have taken him out of the tomb. She doesn't say somebody has taken him out of the tomb, or just the Lord's body is no longer there. She's quickly coming to some conclusions that the body of Jesus has been taken by people who she calls they. Do you think she's thinking that it's the enemies of Jesus who've taken him? Who else could they be in Mary's mind? Then, in John's Gospel, Peter and John go to the entrance of the tomb. Peter looks in and he sees the grave cloths lying there. But he finds the cloth that was around Jesus' head has been folded up and is lying separately from the other grave cloths. Who folded it? Don't you think it's necessary for human hands to have been on that cloth for it to be folded up and in a place by itself? I never even thought about this before until Jesus visited me and showed me these things. I never paid attention to that detail, and many other details that Jesus showed me I didn't realize were so important. And so this cloth was folded up by itself. I think the soldier or one of the soldiers who carried the body of Jesus out before the tomb was sealed, just took the cloth up and folded it, took the cloth off and folded it up neatly. So Peter and John then go away, wondering what's happened. Mary stays inside the tomb crying, and then two angels appear to her, and they ask her, "Woman, why are you crying?" And she says, "They have taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they have put him." So again, we have they. She's still thinking that some people, not just one person, but some people have taken him. Yeah, according to what Jesus showed me, she was right. His body had been taken out. Of course, she didn't know exactly who, but she suspected Jesus' enemies, I think. So this is an interesting detail. And also another interesting detail you find in Matthew's Gospel is that when Judas threw back the 30 pieces of silver into the temple that he had been given for betraying Jesus, the chief priest decided with this money to buy a burial ground for foreigners, well, unclean people. Obviously, they wanted to buy a burial ground then outside the city walls for people who didn't deserve to be buried inside the city walls. Who do you think they were planning on putting there? Don't you think they could have been planning to put Jesus there? In Isaiah 53, verse 9, it says he was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Well, we know he was assigned a grave with the rich because he was put in the rich man's tomb. But if what Jesus is telling me is right, or if what I'm saying is what really Jesus told me, this part of Isaiah 53 would also be fulfilled. He was assigned a grave also with the wicked. He didn't just die on the cross with the wicked, but he was assigned a grave for wicked people. Okay, so that's a bit of information that I left out before. But now I want to focus on the nature of Jesus's resurrected body. Well, William Lane Craig, who seems to be quite an expert on the resurrection, who wrote a book called The Sun Rises, which I've read, came to the conclusion at the end that the resurrected body of Jesus was very similar to the body of an angel, which I agree with. He could appear and disappear, and he could go through walls and doors. He could converse with people. He appeared very solid and substantial, as did sometimes angels in stories in the Old Testament. He could eat, which, according to the story of Abraham, angels who visited Abraham could eat. And he could converse with people, which we know from stories of angels in the Bible also happened. Angels converse with people. Yeah, so this is interesting. I think that Jesus' resurrected body is very similar to the body of an angel. It's not a physical body. There are many different appearances that Jesus made in this resurrected body, recorded in the four Gospels and also mentioned by St. Paul in his letters. And as well as appearing to Mary, we know that Jesus appeared to the disciples who'd locked themselves in the upper room twice, once without Thomas and once with Thomas. This was the occasion where Jesus also asked, "Have you got anything to eat?" And the disciples handed him a piece of boiled fish, and it says he ate it in their presence. So this is an indication we have that Jesus ate. And some people use this to insist that therefore his body must have been a normal physical body and couldn't have been a spiritual body. But as I said, it's also recorded that angels ate with Abraham, so somehow this is possible. Jesus also appeared to Peter, according to the Gospel of Luke, although it's not mentioned how he appeared, and St. Paul also mentions this. Then St. Paul says he appeared to 500 people at once, which I don't think anybody has ever done before. No resurrected person or no person who's passed on has ever appeared to 500 people at once. So you can imagine that was quite a sensation. And then according to Paul, St. Paul, Jesus also appeared to James, which does also make sense because we know that before Jesus' crucifixion, Jesus' brothers weren't disciples, but after the resurrection, they were disciples, or at least James is mentioned as being a disciple. So it seems highly likely that Jesus did appear to James, because why else would James have changed so much from being, not interested in Jesus, not a follower, and then actually becoming a follower and apparently even leading the Jerusalem church. So this makes sense. Yeah, so Jesus's resurrection appearances were quite sensational and occurred over a period of 40 days. Oh, the other appearance he made was when the disciples went back to Galilee, and 7 of them decided to go fishing, and Jesus was waiting on the shore after they'd been fishing all night and not caught anything. And Jesus calls out to them, "Haven't you caught any fish?" And they say no. And then Jesus tells them to put out the net on the other side of the boat. And then they catch loads of fish. And then, only then, does St. John, or John the disciple, realize that this is Jesus standing on the shore. So even though the disciples have seen him already in the locked room, when he appears on the shores of Galilee, they don't recognize him as Jesus. So this shows that Jesus could change appearances. So he must have been a spiritual being and not even necessarily recognizable as Jesus. So he could appear how he wanted to appear. He could appear as a gardener. He could appear on the road to Emmaus to 2 disciples as just a stranger. They just think they've been joined by a stranger who has interesting conversations with them. And only when they invite him in to eat with them in Emmaus, when they get to their destination, and Jesus prays and breaks the bread at the supper, only then they realize that it's Jesus. So you see, he obviously had a different appearance and could change his appearance. Yes, so I hope this inspires you to read maybe into the 4 Gospels for yourself and see if what I'm saying is true, and see what the evidence is, and also what you can do is to watch videos of near-death experiences. You just type onto YouTube NDE with Jesus, and you see that there are many people who've had near-death experiences who've met Jesus on the other side. And some people have had near-death experiences which weren't so nice, and they had horrible experiences. So I think all of us, if we know that we are souls, spirits living in a body, and life is going to go on after this physical life, you definitely want to know where you're going to end up and to be sure that you're going to be in a good place. And I think it would be great to be with Jesus in heaven, don't you?